As I look back on my life now, I find it quite amusing to recall how my life changed from a dreary, boring taxi man to what I am now. I'm not saying taxi men are boring, but for 5 days a week, I was. I used to work Monday to Friday as most people do, but I worked from 7 p.m. until 7 a.m., a fair time, but it brought in quite a bit of money for me. As you may have guessed already, I'm single, but that's by choice. Let me tell you a few things about myself first, then you might understand. My name is Harry Brock. I am 27 years old, but look about 16 or so, which I am forever having my leg pulled about. It's something genetic in the male line of my family. Whoopee-doo. It sounds great looking 10 years younger, until you keep getting asked for your ID about 100 times a week, then it gets boring, so do all the jokes. I earn a fair amount because I'm self-employed and own my own taxi. I live in a nice 2-bedroom apartment in the nice part of town, so I am very lucky. My one and only hobby, as I call it, but it is much, much more, is dressing up as a woman on my 2 days a week off. Since there is no one in my life now, both my parents passed away several years ago, and my sister emigrated to France about the same time, I can live for 2 whole days and nights as a woman. I have a separate wardrobe for Nancy, that's my other name, Nancy Bright, and a chest of drawers, dressing table, etc., everything a girl would need. All my makeup is laid out on the dressing table or bathroom. In fact, if a stranger were to walk into my apartment, he would think a woman lives there. Harry has a few odd things in the other bedroom, nothing much, just the essentials, to go to work as Harry and go out down the pub if required. I've been quite happy about doing this for a few years now. My motto is, I'm not harming anyone, so why should it bother them? There are a few clubs I go to out of my area dressed as Nancy, just to be on the safe side. Well, you never know, do you? I wear a white lace top which shows off my bra, which also gives my small breasts a lift, making me look as if I have slightly larger ones, a short plaid skirt, stockings, and suspender belt. This is to make the men excited, a pair of 4-inch thin heels, pierced ears for my large hooped earrings, and a tummy piercing just to finish the job. I have long black hair, natural I might add, which I do in loose shaggy. Look at these places. I am only known as Nancy. I flirt with some of the men, even a few of the ladies. No one knows whether I am male or female, so for me it has always been a great laugh, with them not being absolutely sure that I was a girl or a very pretty boy. I have had many hands wander up and down, but I've always not let it get too far along, maybe be even a few passionate kisses with both sexes, but I do prefer the men when dressed as Nancy. They are so forceful and dominant, and I must admit I do like that. That was until this one night when a couple walked in. She was absolutely stunning, and he was just drop-dead gorgeous. I had never seen this couple in the club before, so I was immediately intrigued. I think I watched them for most of the night, discreetly of course. Eventually our paths crossed. I introduced myself as Nancy, and that I had not seen them at the club before. They both looked at each other and smiling said, "No, we have been touring all the clubs to see what they are like and what the people are like." They looked at each other again, almost if they were talking to each other, but not speaking. Yes, I know it sounds strange, but that is what it seemed to me anyway. The man then introduced himself as Mr. Jonathan Westfield and his wife Mrs. Abigail Westfield. They both kissed me on the cheeks. I admit I became a bit flustered. There was something about them, but I could not put my finger on it. They asked if I would like to join them for a drink. I for some reason did not even hesitate, and replied, yes, I would love to. We sat in one of the empty cubicles. I somehow ended up sitting between them. They were really pleasant, and the wine flowed. It was about an hour later that they started asking me some general questions at first. How old was I? Did I live local? Did I have any family up here? I know it sounds suspicious now, but at the time with the wine, I seemed to be telling them everything. Mr. Jonathan's wife Abigail suddenly said to me, "Nancy, what's your real name? I mean your boy's name." I was a bit stunned. As far as I knew, everybody thought I was a girl. "Don't worry," she said smiling, "no one knows but us." I replied, "How?" "Never mind that for the moment. Tell me truthfully, Do you really like dressing and acting as a girl off and on as you please, or would you like to be a real one, I mean a full-time woman? Don't be shy now, tell me the truth. Remember. I wasn't sure what was going on, my mind seemed to be in a bit of a haze, but I knew that for some reason I couldn't lie to them, I had to tell them the truth, whatever they asked. There was something about them, or was it the drink, or both? My mind was starting to get flustered. What was happening to me? Again, she asked me. This time I looked at them both, first to her then to him, and said, I have always wanted to be a girl since I can remember. I love wearing my clothes and putting on my makeup. I love doing the housework whilst undressed. I wish I could go out like it and be who I am. I get really excited when men and women talk and touch and treat me as if I were a real girl. Yes, I want to be a woman. The next thing I knew, I had my head on the table, as if I had just dropped off. I was alone. An hour had passed. The couple had gone. The bartender had been told not to disturb me for a good hour by the couple, who had tipped him heavily. I got up and made my way to the cloakroom to splash some water on my face, and to try to work out what had just happened. As I came out, the bartender handed me a piece of paper with an address on it, and a short message. Come if you want your wish to be fulfilled, but only come as Nancy J. and a Westfield. I thought, what the hell was going on? I gathered my stuff and made my way home, fast. I sat in my lounge still dressed as Nancy, trying to work out what had just happened. Who were these people? Why did I answer all of their questions so truthfully? My head was splitting, as if I had too much to drink, but I never got drunk, just in case. I went to the bathroom, washed my makeup off, put my night cream on, slipped on a fresh pair of panties and a nice fancy nightdress I liked, and retired to bed. I was asleep in minutes. I woke up the next day with the biggest hangover I have ever had, but I knew it was not the drink. Someone had slipped something into my glass, but why? I made a cup of coffee and sat at the small table I had in the kitchen, took some headache pills, and thought. Those people last night, who were they? How did they know who I was? The more I thought about it, the more my head hurt. I suddenly remembered the note. I went to my clutch bag and opened it. The note was gone. Did I imagine the whole thing? I phoned the club where I was and asked for the barman who was on duty last night. He remembered me, but not the couple. My head was now turning so fast, I thought it was going to come off. What the hell was happening to me? Was I losing my mind or what? It was several days later when I arrived home. There was a note for me pushed under the door. It read, Dear Nancy, we were sorry to have to leave you so suddenly. But my wife and I had some important talking to do about you. I have arranged for Nancy to be picked up by my chauffeur tonight at 8:00 precisely, whence you will be taken to our home, and everything will be explained to you. As it is a formal gathering, I have taken the liberty to buy you something more suitable for this evening. It should arrive within the next hour. If you do not wish to come, then please accept these gifts as a thank you for your time and trouble. You will neither see or hear from us again after that point. Yours hopefully, J.N.A. Westfield. My only thought at that precise minute was, what the hell? I called in sick that day saying I had a bad cold, and waited. In 3/4 of an hour there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find a middle-aged woman asking if a Nancy Bright lived here. I said, yes, but she's out at the moment. Never mind, the woman said. I was told I could leave these with you, a Mr. Harry Brock. She then stood aside and a man carrying at least 5 parcels came into my room and placed them on the floor. Thank you, Miss Bright, she replied and then left. Could this get any more bizarre? I hoped not, just for my sanity. I opened the boxes, and one was a beautiful long rose-pink dress, flared from the waist down, with an almost lattice see-through top up to the neck, with bare shoulders showing and a matching rose belt separating the two styles around the waist. The back was the wide shoulder straps taken into a long V-shape down to the waist. I could do nothing but admire how beautiful it was. It must have cost a fortune. I opened the second box, that contained a pair of 4-inch high-heeled silver ankle-strapped shoes, which matched the dress perfectly. This was becoming too much for me. The next box contained a large silver interwoven bracelet and a pair of matching dropped earrings. 2 boxes left. I was shaking with anticipation as I opened them. The small one contained a silver rice-studded clutch bag that alone would have cost over $200. The last bigger box contained all the underwear I would need to wear with this dress. There were sheer stockings with a seam running up the back, a suspender belt, a waist petticoat, a strapless uplift bra. These were all matching. I couldn't get my breath. I had never seen that much money spent on clothes before, and they had been given to me whatever I decided. There was a note inside from Mrs. Abigail saying, "I hope you like this color and accessories, Nancy, as my husband chose them for you. I hope to see you tonight. XX." I just flopped down in the chair. I pinched myself to make sure this wasn't a dream. The pinch hurt, so I know it wasn't. I thought to myself, what do you do in a situation like this? Because I had not a clue, what was happening? I looked at the clothes again. They were beautiful. I made my mind up, even if I didn't go, at least I could try them on. I had a nice shower, then put some vanilla body moisturizer on. I do love the smell of that. With a towel wrapped around me, I went back into the lounge, sat down, and painted my toes a light red. Then I shaped my fingernails and painted them the same color. When everything was dry, my anticipation was at its highest. I started taking out the underwear. First the bra. It felt as if it had been made for me. It lifted my tiny bust right up, giving me a good cleavage. Then the panties, which held everything in place, as well as looking damn sexy. I followed this with the suspender belt, which I tucked through my panties. Then my sheer nylons with a seam running down the back. I rolled them up carefully and gently slid them up my legs, fastening them at the top to the suspenders. The feeling was sublime. I was already feeling $1 million by then. Next came the petticoat, which swished on my nylons as I moved. Then I took the dress out and just held it up to me. I was almost breathless as I slipped it on. It fitted me like a glove, a well-made tailored glove. It felt wonderful. I have never drooled so much over a dress before. I went to the dressing table, put a towel around my neck so that I didn't spill any makeup on it, and proceeded with shaking hand to make my makeup go with the dress. After many indecisions and tries, I succeeded. I brushed my hair out and fixed it with a pink clip, giving me a nice ponytail. Then came my earrings. I was lucky as my ears were already pierced, so they slipped in and dangled just below my ears. I put the matching bracelet on and slipped into the shoes, a slight dab of perfume, and picking up the clutch bag, I went to the full-size mirror I had, and spent the next hour just twirling around, living in my own little fantasy world. All of a sudden, the doorbell rang. A voice said, "I'm from Mr. and Mrs. Westfields. I've come to pick up a Miss Nancy Bright. Is she ready?" I was so startled I just said, "I'm coming." As I followed the driver out, I wondered what I was letting myself in for, but on the other hand, I would never get a chance to wear clothes like these again. The car was waiting right in front of the door. The man went around and opened the rear of the car door for me. As I got in, he reminded me to fasten my safety belt, and then closed the door gently. The windows were tinted so it was hard to see out, and there was a glass partition between the driver and myself, so I couldn't even ask him where we were going. All I knew was the drive took over an hour. Then we turned up this very long drive and stopped at the main door. The driver got out and opened the door for me. My hands were shaking as I got out, and I was feeling and looking a bit bewildered. I looked around. The house was like a castle. It was gigantic, bigger than I had ever seen. I let a breath slip through my lips. As I reached the front door, it was suddenly opened by a butler who said, "Good evening, Miss Bright. Please come this way. The master and mistress are expecting you." I just said, "Thank you," and followed him. As I walked on the marble floor, I could hear my shoes clicking, which was making me even more nervous. I clutched my bag even tighter. The butler came to a large oak door, knocked and entered, introducing me slowly, "A Miss Nancy Bright, sir." They both came over to me and thanked me for coming, then commenting on how well the dress fitted and how it made me bloom even more. I just blushed and said, "Thank you to you both. You have been very generous to me, but I must ask, if you don't mind, why?" They both looked at each other as before and said, "We will explain everything to you after dinner, then I hope we can continue our proposition to you." Now I was really concerned. They had bought me all these clothes. What did they want in return? We sat at this huge wooden table where we were served by the butler. The food was absolutely delicious. Everything was in small portions but very delicately prepared. I caught them every now and again glancing at me, so I was on my best girlish behavior, only taking small bites, chewing slowly, stopping now and again to have a sip of water, dabbing my mouth but not too hard to smudge my lipstick. After dinner we retired to the lounge where we were served drinks. Mr. and Mrs. Westfield asked me to sit down and they would explain everything to me, from start to finish. They began by first saying, "Now Nancy, if at any time you are uncomfortable about what we are saying or asking, please tell us. We will end the conversation there. I will call the car to take you home. You may keep the clothes you're wearing, and you will never see or hear from us again. Is that all right with you?" My mind was racing, wondering what they were going to ask or say, but I just had to know. I would never be able to live with myself if I stopped them. "That will be fine with me," I said. "I'm so glad to hear you say that, Nancy," said Mrs. Westfield, "but I will let my husband continue. As you might have guessed, Nancy, we have been watching you for quite a number of weeks now. We had to make sure you were the person we wanted. We had people delve into your background, so we know everything about you, which for us was a good thing. Please don't worry, we found nothing bad at all." I just sat there trying to look composed, thinking I've been spied on and researched. What are they, police, CIA or what? We had to do all of this for what we are going to ask you. In our position we have to be very careful what we do. You might think this is all very strange, but I will lay it out for you in simple terms. If you agree to that, then we will go into more detail. My wife and I have been happily married for 8 years now. We have no children yet, but we are expecting one in 8 months. Then looking at his wife sadly, as he carried on, "My wife has only about a year to live, bad heart, no cure. So, she decided that I should remarry for the sake of the child, so it will grow up with a mother and father." My wife looked for a suitable person for me, but as soon as they knew we had money and estates, well, she just had bad feelings about them all, and I must admit I wasn't too keen on any of them taking my wife's role with our baby. We were in a club one day when we encountered you. You were one of the most extraordinary people we had ever seen. You were contented, happy, charitable. We know that because on more than one occasion we saw you give money to someone who was a bit hard up, with no hesitation at all. I started to blush at that point. I had never given it a thought about anything. I was just happy being me, Nancy. Mr. Westfield carried on. At that point my wife was happy that she had found a woman who would look after my son and I, after her demise. I will say as well that I found you very charming. It wasn't until later we found you were in fact Harry Brock, a man. We were devastated. That was our luck, we thought. Then we found out about your dressing and your secret wish to be a full-time woman. Please do not ask where we got this information from, as we cannot tell you. Anyway, we carried on our research about you, and my wife came up with this very unusual idea. By this time, I was completely mesmerized by what they were saying and implying. How had they got all this information on me, especially wanting to be a full-time woman? Mr. Westfield offered me another drink, saying that I looked like I needed one. He was not wrong. He then stopped and said to me, "Would you still like us to carry on, or would you like me to call the car for you, Nancy?" I replied, "No, please carry on." I saw Mrs. Westfield smile. It made me feel all fluttery inside. "This is the idea, Nancy. Please brace yourself." Deep down I knew what he was going to say, and I knew my answer straight away, but I had to let them outline what it was they wanted. "Right," said Mr. Westfield, "we are willing to pay you the sum of $50,000 up front, and $10,000 a month for you to have a full sex change and facial reconstruction. All this will be done privately, of course. You will live as our housekeeper until such time as my wife is too ill to do anything. You will then become her full-time nurse. After the baby is born, you will be given lactose injections so that you will produce milk for our baby. You will stay on after my wife has gone as our housekeeper and wet nurse. Are you still with me, Nancy? I just nodded my head with a faint smile on my face. I would be suckling a baby from my own breast with my own milk. If everything goes well, you will eventually become lady of the house, my second wife. That will then give you parental rights of our child. It will be your job as a mother to bring him or her up in the correct way. As far as relationships go, my wife has decided that after she can no longer continue to fulfill her duty as a wife, you are to take her place. I know this sounds very callous, but my wife and I have talked long and hard over all this, and she knows that her baby and her husband will be in very capable hands with you. He then sat down next to his wife and said, "Is that all you wanted me to say, my darling? Is there anything you want to add?" Mrs. Westfield said, "Nancy, I know this is a lot for us to ask a stranger, but to us it seems we have known you intimately for quite a while, and I know deep down, woman to woman, that you will look after them both for me." Tears came to my eyes as I said, "I will look after them both with my life." So, started my journey into womanhood. It would take time and cause me a great deal of pain sometimes, but I have never regretted any part of it. And I like to thank Abigail for believing that I was the right type of woman inside, for her husband and daughter. I moved into their house the following weekend as Nancy. I was never referred to as anything else than a friend of Abigail's from her youth. I met her and Jonathan friends and became a close member of the family. Harry Brock sold his taxi to the firm he worked for and moved back to New York, and as far as we know, he still lives there with his new wife. Epilogue: It is 2 years since Abigail passed away. I am now married to Jonathan, and I look after his daughter Abigail, named as you see after her mother. We are a very happy family, and I am so fortunate to have been a part of being a real mother to her. Jonathan and I have a very happy and fulfilling sexual time in our private times. He treats me as his wife and as Abigail's stepmother. We are now just a normal married couple with a child, something I could have only dreamt about a few years ago.